Hi and welcome to Global Studies with Miss Pritchard. This video is for Global 2 students. It is vocab number 5. It is going to cover industrialization and 19th century changes. Just to forewarn you, there are a lot of words, so be ready for it. All right, remember, you can write these on flashcards or you can write them in your notebook. And you should really listen to the video once. Well, because listening is key to learning. And then once you listen to it, then go through and copy the words, because I think you'll find you write the words a lot faster after you've heard them once. And listening will help you remember, which is kind of the whole point of going over the vocabulary. So if you're not going to listen to the video, I really don't get why you're doing this. All right, we are going to start with changes in farming, because you can't get industrialization until you need fewer people to feed all of your people. So 105 is the agricultural revolution, and this is changes in farming methods that occur in the 16th and 17th century that improve production and allow fewer people to feed a larger population. And remember, we've seen throughout history that the more food you have, the more people you have. All right, 106, the enclosure movement. We talked about this with the urban game. This is the change in farming that occurs in the 17th and 18th century. It goes right back to those changes in farming that we just talked about in the agricultural revolution, where wealthy landowners start fencing in their land because it makes more sense to have larger farms if you are going to invest in that expensive machinery that makes it easier to grow food. They also fence in their land to raise sheep because you have that growing textile industry, so they need the wool and the thread and all of that. So that leaves your poor farmers with no common land, which does free them up to become factory workers. They also start to figure out crop rotation. This is a system that increases farm production because they figure out what crops to grow in each field to allow the soil to regenerate. So, for example, if you grow beans one year, you grow the cabbage the next year, and that helps regenerate the soil so you can keep getting a large crop instead of a smaller and smaller crop because you're depleting the soil. All right, some basic terms. Industrial Revolution, that is the 18th and 19th century when Europe moved from an agricultural economy to a manufacturing economy where they had factories making things. Industrialization is making goods in factories, not in homes or by craftsmen as it had been done for centuries. A factory, that is a place that brings workers and machines together to produce goods. And remember, you need factories because a lot of these machines, especially the one with the water frame, you needed a huge building to put these in. So this is what pulls people out of their homes to start working, which, if you think about it, that's the way most people work today, outside of their homes. Entrepreneur, this is someone willing to take risks and start a business. And a stock corporation, this is a company that is owned by investors. In other words, everybody gives a little bit of money and then they all share in the profits, or they share the loss if the company doesn't work out. The impact of industrialization. Well, the first one you get is urbanization. That is where people move from rural areas to cities, and you see that because of the enclosure movement and because of the factories. Factories are in cities. That's where people move for jobs because they no longer have land to farm. The middle class. This is the social class of educated artisans, merchants, skilled workers. They are not rich or poor, but they are very successful. And with industrialization, that is a growing class in society. Capitalism. This is the economic system that allows the law of supply and demand to run the market. And it's open competition for all. The market is free from government control. The U.S. is a capitalist nation because anybody can start a business if they want to. All right, laissez-faire. This is French for hands off. And this is an economic policy that allows the markets and businesses to determine prices. There is no government interference. And this is a theory that was proposed by Adam Smith. He is a Scottish economist whose ideas are the basis of free market capitalism. And if you watch the news, especially like Fox News and your right-wing conservatives, they're the ones that are always spouting off about free markets and smaller government and no interference. They are definitely laissez-faire capitalists. All right, other isms that develop in the 19th century. There is utilitarianism, and this is a philosophy that believes ideas, institutions, and actions should all be judged by their usefulness. In other words, their utility. Socialism. This is another economic system, and it calls for public ownership and government-controlled markets that benefit everyone. In the news, you hear that Obamacare and that Obama is a socialist. And that is because it's the idea of the government providing services for people. All right, communism. This one you should highlight and star because it is the driving force behind most of the 20th century in terms of conflicts and rhetoric, what people are saying and what people are afraid of, especially in the United States. The United States was terrified of communism, and if you pay attention to the right-wing news today, they are still terrified of communism. All right, so what is communism? Communism is this radical economic system in which the people own all of the factors of production. In other words, everything needed to produce goods is owned by everybody, and everybody works to their ability and receives according to their needs. So there's no private property. In pure communism, there's not even a government. Everybody just magically gets along and gets what they need. Now, I will tell you, it's a beautiful idea, but it goes against human nature because the whole reason people work is to get more or to get ahead. So why would I become a teacher if working at McDonald's is going to get me the exact same thing? Because working at McDonald's is way easier and way cheaper. All right. Karl Marx, he is the German journalist whose ideas form the foundation of communism. He writes a book called The Communist Manifesto with Friedrich Engels. And he really did not have a positive view of industrialization or capitalism, probably because he watched a couple of his kids starve to death because he couldn't support the family because of greedy factory owners and all of that. Anyways, communism, driving force once it's developed by Karl Marx, and then we will study the Russian Revolution, which is the first communist revolution, and that's what really pushes it into the forefront and what makes everybody afraid of it. All right, reform. So along with the negatives, you get some positives. So in the urban game, we learned that workers had really horrible lives and no protection, and you know that that's not the way it is today. A huge reason for that is unions. Workers joined together to bargain together for better wages. That is called collective bargaining, and they argued that they needed better wages and better work conditions. If they did not get the better wages and the better work conditions, they refused to work. This is called a strike. And it's a method used to get better pay and better work conditions, and it shows the owners the power of the workers. It only works when everybody agrees to do it. If you've watched the news recently, a lot of fast food workers are striking because they want better pay. There's a lot of people that work full-time. They're only making minimum wage. You can't live on that. They have families to support, and this is a whole debate going on in the news. If you want some extra credit, you can turn in some current events about that. Other reform movements of the 19th century include the abolitionist movement, and that is the movement to end slavery. The suffrage movement, which was fighting for women to get the right to vote. And there's the Chartist movement. This was a movement in Britain to increase democracy. They wanted secret ballots, no land requirement for parliament members, and pay for parliament members so that it was open for anybody to serve in the government. All right, 19th century terms you need to know. Queen Victoria. She is the Queen of Britain from 1837 to 1901, one of the longest reigning monarchs in history. And her name is the name for the 19th century, the Victorian era. Dominion. This is a self-governing part of the British Empire. It was Canada, New Zealand, and Australia. Home rule. This is control over domestic issues and self-rule. You hear it a lot in terms of Ireland, India, and South Africa. They were all denied home rule by the British. Irish Republican Army. This is a nationalist group that fought for Irish home rule and eventually independence. They are considered a terrorist group today, and that is because since the 1970s, they've assassinated a bunch of British officials, and, they used to blow things up on the metro system in London, so the British don't like them very much. The Dreyfus Affair. This is a French scandal where a Jewish officer is framed, court-martialed, and convicted of treason, and it's all because he was Jewish. And once it was revealed that he was framed because of that, it shows that there is a growing prejudice against Jews in Europe. All right, that prejudice against Jews is called anti-Semitism, and that leads to Zionism, a movement to create a Jewish homeland in Palestine. All right, cultural changes. The assembly line. This is a method created by Henry Ford. Each worker does one specific job on the line and it increases factory production. He applied this to making cars and it allowed him to make a car like every 2 or 3 minutes. It was really incredible. And Charles Darwin, he is a scientist who develops the theory of evolution after studying creatures in the Galapagos Islands. And it's still pretty controversial today. And mass culture, it's also called popular or pop culture, and that's the common culture created by the improvements in communication and entertainment in the late 19th century. You can think of our mass culture today as Facebook and Twitter and television. All of that comes under mass culture. All right. That is it for the words. I probably talked way too fast through most of that, but I think you guys will get it. Don't forget to put images into your notebooks. A lot of you aren't getting that, so you're not getting full credit on your vocab. You should do that. It will help you remember, and that is the whole point. All right, show me your notes for credit.